Sans cocktail today, just a little bit of coffee.
Well, maybe there is no alcohol in here.
We are
Should I get some Bailey?
You could, yeah.
Yeah, but then I have to stick it in the freezer.
That's true. You can't just stick a Bailey's. You gotta process the Bailey's first.
Well, I mean, it would be nice if it was. Do you put Bailey's in a cold drink? I think you can put Bailey's hot or cold, but the thing is, once the Bailey's is open, because it's got cream, I feel like you're supposed to store it in the freezer. So what's going to happen is I'm not going to open that Bailey's for a year. So I should nip it in the butt. Honey, pause.
Oh my God.
I'm going to go put a little Bailey's in this.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's.
It's like Popeye and his spinach. Power up. That's sweet. That is.
Wow.
That's very sweet.
You're so brave. You're so brave.
Getting tipsy on a Sunday morning.
So we are now back from our last event in a stretch of events. Mm-hmm. The Thing in Portland, and it was kind of an epic weekend for many reasons.
Yes, Portland always is.
Portland always is. It was a little bit cold, on the cold side, on the rainy side. It was that side of Portland that makes people want to leave Portland, I think. A little miserable.
Yeah, I mean, having probably had this for 6 months now, I'm sure a lot of people are like, enough, please. Summertime.
Yeah, but in contrast, the event itself was really amazing. It was great to see so many people coming back to tango. For me, I guess, we had sort of different experiences because you're coming into this event as a visiting dancer, and I'm coming to it as like a returning part of the community. And so every time that I go back to Portland, I always feel a little bit of this sensation of coming home or homecoming and getting to touch base with people that I don't typically keep in touch with. But this time there was this other layer of actually seeing people coming back who had been out of the scene for a long time. They left to have babies, to have marriages or move somewhere. And now they're like coming back. And it was really kind of a cool experience that made me think like, oh, the cycles of life are much bigger than I expected. Because I remember those dancers leaving and feeling really sad for the scene, and everybody was kind of saying like, oh, the tango scene is dying out because these dancers are leaving, and we can't hold on to dancers because life takes over, and poor us.
Do you mean to imply that tango is more than just dancing? What? Just
yeah,
get
right.
to the dancing part, lady.
Right. So how was it for you? This was your third time going?
I think, but it's really kind of hard to tell. And sometimes what happens with this particular event, like you can maybe do like a night on the edges, if there's some space. So I have this memory that I was in town at one point and maybe was able to attend for like just an evening and kind of see it a little bit. So yeah,
that's right. That's when I saw you. I have this memory of seeing you before I really knew who you were. Mm-hmm. And I just saw you at the front, and then you were gone.
Yeah, I'm like the wind. This at least two, right? Because we went last year.
At least two, yes.
But probably
no, it's been at least three because we've gone to one before COVID, I think.
Oh, okay.
I believe that did happen.
Yeah, so a few times. My sense is that many people who experienced the thing early on their first or second time, there's lots of intimidation. It's a very high level
Yeah.
kind of event.
Yeah.
Lots of good dancers, some peculiarities about the event and the space that we'll get into. So a lot of people describe it with intimidation or being intimidating. That's something I hear a lot of people describe it as. Still, it was that for me, but a little less so, probably. I felt a little bit, it was more relaxed and enjoyable. I had a great time.
Interesting.
I had great dances.
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting event because it's been going on for so long, and it's held at this historic tango venue, Tango Baratine. I feel like it's an iconic venue at this point in the States. And so this event has this almost like a sacred energy around it, like a pilgrimage. Like people really want to get into this event. And when people don't get into it, they feel really sad. And I felt sad when I didn't get into it several years in a row. So there's this sort of special aura about it. And it was, in some ways, it's kind of like you don't experience that just anywhere. So,
and for some people, they go, "Oh, that thing happened that weekend."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Neither here nor there, which is the case for me
Right.
most years.
But also, I think even at that level, like to some extent, it's sort of like this pure tango space. Like it's a venue dedicated for tango. It's all the best social dancers. It's people who've been dancing the longest a lot of times. I mean, there's a sprinkling of beginners, but it's really, old timers. And at that level, in that kind of environment, you still see the same problems that you see at every other milonga. It's still cliquish, it's still ambiguous, it's hard to, some people feel really isolated and out of the loop. And, I'm coming back to this event as a seasoned dancer, as a veteran. It's like probably my 6th or 7th time to go. And I lead and I follow, and I have all this fame and notoriety, let's say, that would seem like it would guarantee me all the dances I want with anyone, right? Like of all the things that you might think you need to guarantee yourself a pass and not have to deal with the rejection, I kind of have all of it. And I still had to deal with that. I still had to deal with feeling like an outsider with some people, or not being accepted or being rejected. And so I thought it would be cool to talk about the tactics that are involved in getting dances, because it's still a very current issue, even for people who've been doing it for a long time.
You still got to put the work in.
You still have to deal with the awkwardness.
I just want all eyeballs on me. And I just want to just look out and go, you.
I mean, I think there was a feeling in me for a long time that I would look at certain dancers and I would project this image, thinking that, when I'm like them, I'm going to be immune to these other problems. I'm not going to be overlooked or passed over when I'm like that person. And it's like makes you strive for something, but ultimately, no matter how far or how much you change or try to do something, you're never immune completely. There's always going to be that challenge. And so for me, I noticed this time, for whatever reason, I actually had a really hard time with a lot of the men, which was so surprising to me because I know pretty much everyone there. Most, like 98% of men there have danced with me at one point or another. And most of the time, from what I could tell, they enjoyed it. And this time, it was like very obvious that they were not looking back at me or just completely ignoring me. And it was obvious that they were choosing to dance with dancers who were obviously not as seasoned as me, and I clocked that, and that conversation was going on in my head. Even though I'm like, what does that mean? What does it matter to me ultimately? Like, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be people like that, right? And so I had to realize that I had to change my tactics, because I kind of expected that I was going to go in and be, it would be really easy for me to get dances. But I noticed that I had to sort of, as you said, put in the work. And for me, the first thing I went to, which I think would be my number one tactic that I would suggest to everyone, but especially to followers, and that is move around. Don't sit in one spot. Because whether it's me sitting for a bit of time or me observing someone, it's like there's always this like stagnant energy that happens, and you just kind of get locked into this pocket, and people end up kind of flowing in particular patterns in a space. And so they just might not be aware of you based on where you're sitting. And I saw quite a number of times there were women sitting in a particular area in the room, and over the course of the milonga, their postures just sort of like sunk back into their chairs, and their arms just kind of went like this. And I just kind of clocked for myself that I really had to be proactive, and I had to move around. I had to change places. Pretty much after every tanda, I would go to a different place, and either try to capaceo people by the food, which I did not learn my lesson. I kept doing this thing where I would capaceo someone as they were putting something in their mouth.
I feel so bad when I do that.
It's so funny because it's such a high traffic capaceo area, and it's like very convenient. There's a bathroom there, and there's that little area, but there's also snacks, right? And so it's both very convenient to like walk off the floor and just put something in your mouth, and it's a capaceo area. So it makes sense that I would capaceo there, but my timing and everyone I capaceoed, their reaction was like they're putting something in their mouth, their eyes get really big, and they're like, yes, I want, yes. And they would be really excited, but then they're like, having to chew really fast. And I kept remembering this as I would do it. I'm like, just wait, just don't rush to capaceo. But that was kind of the energy there. You had to like grab it quick. If you had somebody in mind that you had wanted to dance with, you had to grab them. Otherwise, it was gone.
Yeah. I think the venue, the difficulty of the layout too, makes it one of the most interesting capaceo spaces. There's an aspect to what you're saying, which I want to acknowledge, which is it's very brave of you to say that you have some kind of expectation for people wanting to dance with you, and that there might be a distance between your expectations and the reality. Now, the reason why people may not dance with you can be completely outside of their desire to dance with you. There was plenty of people who I wanted to dance with
Totally.
that I didn't really make too much of an effort to dance with. Now, why was that? I don't know, maybe there's a part of me who was like, man, you got to capaceo them really quick, right? Because there was a lot of competition for dances with them. And depending on your mindset or your feelings on a particular evening or afternoon, you might kind of be like, I don't really want to sort of jump into that fray. But the weekend is long, and so you might, try to do it at different points in time. I don't know if that happened to you at all. Like, did you maybe not dance with some of these leaders that you wanted to dance with for a while, but then maybe you did towards the back part? Was there a difference at all?
No, I mean, there were certain people who were just like, no, absolutely not. It's just not going to happen. And there were certain people who sought me out because like the third day I just sort of made this mental shift and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna dance with the women. I'm just gonna Capaseo women. There were some fabulous female leaders there, so I could switch, and there were a lot of great followers. So I just sort of switched my mindset, and once I shifted away from my focus on the leaders, there were some leaders who came and sought me out that I was surprised. I wasn't expecting. Because there were certain leaders that I was like, I'm not even going to try. They're like off to like dance with all these other dancers. And then some of them did seek me out. And that was really cool. I really appreciated that. So, and some of it is just, once again, so much of it is mindset, that these things are going to continue happen no matter what, like how much history you have with it or with the community. And you might have certain expectations that like, oh, well, this person knows me. They're going to want to dance with me,
Right.
and then they don't. Yeah. Like that's going to happen.
Right. Someone said to you that the dance starts with the Capaseo. Right?
Yes.
And absolutely. The Capaseos where I had a little bit of intention, and maybe I was starting it prior to the Tonda starting, maybe starting it during the Capaseo, those tended to feel the best, right? Because the Capaseo feels a little effortless. It feels agreed upon really early, and then it travels with you then out to the dance floor. So those are the nicest, I think.
Yeah, there was something I came up with another friend during the weekend, which was Thread the Needle Capaseo.
Oh, I love threading.
Which I feel like is a perfect name for this kind of Capaseo, because when I say that phrase, everybody understands what that means. And if you don't, just imagine a crowd of people and you're looking at someone specific that's standing, 10 feet away from you with like 20 people in between, and you're looking towards them and you see their eye through the opening between all the faces and all the necks, and you catch their eye and the Capaseo happens. And it's like, it's such a fun
When you say the
game.
Capaseo happens, are you agreeing to the dance in that moment?
Yeah, like that you catch their eye, you see that you see the little nod and you nod, and then, it's game on.
Yeah. A similar one like that happened to me a couple of times, where threading the needle, I catch their eye, but then the valley is gone, right? Because somebody walks in your line of sight. And so the opportunity for it to kind of not happen is there, but you could kind of tell in just that microsecond that there was an acknowledgement, and maybe it feels like there's also an agreement on the dance. And so you can let it play out a little bit. You don't move away. You kind of stay in that space, and it's like you've almost got the fish on the line. Maybe I'm the fish. Yeah, maybe she hooked me. I'm not saying I'm hooking every.
But you're gonna wait. You're gonna wait.
Wait it out in the space. I'm gonna keep that line taut, and then when maybe the song starts or our view is reestablished, then I'm gonna ask. And usually I do wait, especially if that happens during the cortina.
I thought you were going to say that the people pass, but then you realize that person's still waiting with you, looking at you. That happens.
But usually I'm describing a situation where it's happening during the cortina.
Oh, okay.
And
okay,
so
gotcha.
It's sort of like, there's because even during the cortina, people are starting to position themselves. And so coming back to...
it happens. Sometimes it's happened during the Tonda. I've seen leaders Capaseo women while dancing with someone in their arms.
Right.
So that's like a whole other extreme. So yeah, it's like it happens all along the line of that etiquette.
That might be another topic in and of itself. There's a part of me like, man, that's a gangster move. It also feels a little, I don't know. I don't have the chutzpah to Capaseo from the dance floor during another dance,
but please tell me that you've done this, because I think we can all admit to this, that we're dancing with someone and then we look around and we catch someone else that we really want to dance with, and we're like, oh, they're here. I want to make sure I dance with them. Like, have you never done that?
Yeah, I guess.
I
Maybe
think that's
clock
pretty.
that
That's
somebody-
pretty common.
Yeah.
That's pretty common to do that, and that's like, I mean, that's part of a capaseo. That's already happening, right? Like you're already scheming. There's already tactics going on. You're like, oh, that person's here, you know. So it's kind of interesting how, like, we can think of ways that capaseo just is this one thing that you do, but it involves like so many layers.
Yeah,
to
you've
it.
got to scheme. Like
You've got to
capaseo
scheme.
is scheming. It is scheming. I mean, I think for all the engineers out there, dance and tango, I think the way I've started to think about it is, look, wherever you're going to position yourself, and let's just say we're going to start at our N0 is when the prior tanda ends. So the cortina now starts. At that point, you can position yourself, and people are going to maybe begin off the dance floor, but you can start to think, well, who do I want to dance with? And wherever you are, you can imagine there's lines of sight to probably not more than a dozen dancers, right? So where are you going to start to position yourself if you do want to get a dance with a particular person? You have to start scheming at that moment, and you have to start positioning yourself to be within their line of sight.
Oh my gosh, that's so stressful. I don't do that at all.
Well, yeah, you don't have to, but like the reality is you are going to be somewhere when that tanda does start. You are going to have proximity to a certain number of people, and it feels very complicated. You might be like, well, there's 100 people here in this room.
Yeah.
But you are in a space, and there's only so many people that can occupy a space sort of near you. And the probability of being able to capaseo anybody decreases as the space between you decreases, right? Like you can go for a long capaseo, but the reality is it's going to be much easier if somebody's also closer. It's going to be easier if they're not sitting with 3 other people that might also be trying to dance. And so,
Yeah. You're basically saying your tactic involves just being aware of like how you're located in proximity to the person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for pulling it back on it, because I wanted to get into the minutia of it.
I know.
But absolutely. So from the get-go. So what's a technique? From the cortina, I like to stay out on the dance floor a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
And kind of like it gives me an
that's why you
opportunity.
do that.
I like the cortinas too.
Interesting.
But there is a benefit, and usually what I'll do is I'll kind of sweep. I'll kind of sweep and just kind of like orient myself. There's a little bit of this feeling like, yeah, don't be a bad student, Alex. Like if you do a quick sweep,
you see where the people are going.
Yeah.
Who is going to be where.
Right. And oftentimes the end result of that is I just start walking somewhere. Like I don't carry a ton of intention to it, because I feel like having a ton of intention also is a great way to sort of be disappointed. And if I want to dance and I get a dance, like, hey, great, right? Like there's something magical to happen with anybody that you might dance with. It doesn't matter whether they're like the end all be all best dancer in the room or somebody you've never met before, and who knows what might happen.
I like how this connects to my tactic. It's really very much has to do with that idea of being aware of the space and being aware of your relationship to people around. I have to say, I'll have to try some of this myself, although some of my tactics are a little bit different, because I noticed there was this other thing that I had to do. I had to look down a lot in the cortinas, because there were a lot of people who were ready to, both leaders and followers who were ready to like signal to me that they wanted to dance. And I always wanted to hear what the tanda was going to be first. So my strategy was move off the floor and recede into the corner and just sort of like hang out there, listen for the song, and then let that first wave of dancers go. That first commotion, like, oh, I must go, I must dance. Like that energy, like let those go. And then there's like that second wave of dancers who are just coming on, they're ready, but they haven't gotten a dance yet. And I just would kind of hang out for that wave. and then go in. And that seemed to work for this event pretty well for me. But that, that might be because I'm definitely dual role. So like I'm both leading and following. So when people look at me, it's like double whammy there.
I'm thinking of Kalker's capitalist versus, I guess a communist sort of view of tango, where you might be highly sought after, right? And that difference is going to exist for many dancers, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just accept that there's a spectrum of that. And so there might be a little bit of defense that one needs to play a little bit too, depending on, how good a dancer, let's just say, or how highly desirable you are as a dancer.
And if our listeners are curious what you're referring to, you're talking about the interview I did with Oliver Kalker, where he talks about the economics of tango.
Right.
And I'll go ahead and include the link to that episode in the show notes in case you want to hear it.
I love that analogy, and
it was really profound. It was a really great way of thinking about it. It impersonalized it and made it a bit more concrete, I think. So it's a great framework.
Right.
So you're saying, that there is this spectrum. And, that's actually a great topic for another banter, because I have had conversations with women who have the opposite complaint, which is that they get so many offers and so many people, so much energy, people seeking them out, offering them things, wanting things from them. And it just gets like overwhelming in this other way. Yeah. So there's definitely a spectrum, and I fall, I believe I fall in very middle. I'm not like the highest sought after dancer, but I do I do have a lot of interest in me just because I'm also leading. Yeah. And I was aware of that if I just followed, I would feel very competitive with the women there, because the leaders were very picky, and they tended to go for a very specific type over and over and over again.
Sure.
I was there. And in some ways I was going to mention too that it's such a great event. It's so awesome in every way. I love it. But also when tango gets this criticism for being cliquish and creating these little pockets of people who only interact with each other and not everybody else. There was that to the nth degree. That was even more prominent. It had
that weekend?
At the thing. Yeah, it felt like it felt like all of the limitations were lifted off of people who wanted to behave that way. They were just we're going to do exactly what we want. We don't care about the larger community. This is not about contributing to making tango more friendly. This is a private party, and I'm going to hang out only with people I want to hang out. And that can be a difficult thing to penetrate if you're coming in to an event. And I did see some people who were new to the event, and it was tough for them.
Sure. You can judge it for that. And you can also not judge it.
Yeah, I mean,
you can also go, look, that's what it is.
There can be a lot of judgment.
People like being around the familiar.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good moment to come to this space, because the space kind of reinforces that a little bit, because it's so interesting and there's lots of little pockets. It's not a big square room. It's
not inclusive.
Right. There's lots of kind of there's rooms to it. And so you can be around the snack area. You could be by the front door. You could be on the patio. You could be on the patio. You can be there's kind of a lounge area, and there's another lounge area that's close to the sort of dressing area, where you might hang your coats and stuff. So you might tend to be in any particular space, right? You might not want to move around too much. You might want to kind of call one place your sort of home base. And that can reinforce a sort of feeling of cliquishness, much like, at festivals where the teachers are going to be very close to the DJ booth, right? And so you kind of like know there's like certain areas where it just feels like a little more difficult to
A little
throw
waspy.
Capaseo.
That's what I decided to call it. It's just
You
this
too, that's
this
right.
waspy energy, you know. You're like,
Which stands for what?
I don't know. What does it stand for?
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I was actually thinking of the insect. Like literally, because you know when you see a wasp, when you see a bee, you're just like bee. When you see a wasp, you're like respect. Okay, I'm gonna let you be.
I'm just understanding.
You
now.
know, like I'm not gonna mess with you, but I'm not gonna be around you. So that's like. To me, it literally was that energy from some people. You know, it's there. Tango has that a lot.
Gotcha. I thought when you used wasp, you used it because waspy was used to kind of describe like, you know, that it's like there being almost like a caste system, and so the wasps were at the upper end of the spectrum, and so they were, you know, it felt a little unpenetrable.
Well, that makes sense why that would be the word to describe that. I mean, but I wasn't familiar with an acronym. But we're also realizing that I'm still Russian, and I don't know things.
They got little stingers. You can be careful.
Yeah, they do. But my point is that that's just there, and it was very obvious, you know, and the space really enhanced it to some degree. Now, I also know that there are some dancers who are not necessarily waspy, but they come off that way just because they're socially awkward or they feel like they don't fit in themselves. Like, so they're not going to make the first step to connect with you. But if you make the step, they're not going to resist it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think my other tactic that I feel comes to serve in this kind of environment and then in any other tango environment. I think this always helps me, and I have to remind myself this all the time. And that is choose to ask the question, choose to connect with someone, like throw out the hook, see if they bite, and talk to people, you know, because you never know. Some of those waspy people, they will open up and suddenly you'll be part of their circle. And it happens like that. And that's happened to me many times where I perceived that certain group of people, they're very insular. They're only hanging out with themselves, you know, with each other. And I'm an outsider. But then there would be an opportunity for me to do something, to reach out, to strike up a conversation, to comment on their shoes, to do something. And suddenly I realized that this person actually really wants to talk to me. And then they actually include me in their little circle. That doesn't happen all the time. There's plenty of times when I throw out a few hooks and then I'm like, this person really is not fun to be around. I'm like, I don't want to, never mind, like move on. But other times it did pay off. So I would say chatting people up, even if you think they're totally out of your league, if you think you're never going to dance with them, like just chat with them for the purpose of chatting with them. Like you never know where that connection can lead, because they might introduce you to someone else, or you might find out something from them that ends up serving you. So that would be like my other big one that I recommend.
Yeah. There was one tactic that I actually just learned this weekend, and it was because my former tango teacher is now over on the East Coast. He was there and he saw me trying to Capaseo someone. And so for all of my kind of prior recommendations, like, oh, here's, you know, how I like work my Capaseo and like get the dance up. It was like the grasshopper moment. Like I was, what? Like, you know, mind blown. Like I've been doing it wrong the entire time. So let me set it up. Highly sought after dancer is, you know, sitting kind of in a space where I'm like, wow, like she's kind of like like right there. Like there's no potential confusion. Like I can throw my Capaceo very clearly. I'm kind of in the middle of the dance floor. It's sort of there's a direct line of sight. And so I'm sort of looking, right? And I think I'm throwing Capaceo.
You think you're doing what
I
you're
think
supposed
I'm
to.
doing it just how I've done it before.
You're
in
far
the past,
enough.
the way it'll work. I'm kind of
You get your head nod ready.
exactly. And it doesn't seem to get received. And I would normally describe it as like, nah, yeah, she's
Not interested.
She's not interested, because it was clear enough to me that I was there and I'm not getting anything back. He sees this. And so as I turn to walk away, he starts walking towards me. And so I'm kind of like repositioning to throw somewhere else on the other side of the room. And he's like, you can dance with her. And he goes, walk firmly towards her with a steady gaze. Go now. And so it goes from like, oh, I'm just listening to like, he's like pushing me in there. And I'm like, oh. So I take 4 steps, look right at her, and she looks at me. And then it's like that moment of like, and I nod the head and boom. She accepts it. And we get up and dance. And I mean, honey, I think I told you.
It was a good one.
Thank goodness.
It was a good one.
Yeah, it was a great one. And I was like, the whole time, the first song, especially, I was like, what? What just happened? And, later on, I talked with him about it and thanked him for it. And just that sort of asked him, like, what did you see? And what was, like, what did you think? And he said that I was just too far, right? Like, it was not clear enough. But the way I really saw it was, sometimes you really, like, it's the peacocking nature of Capaceo. Like, you really have to give this person a reason to look towards you. Maybe it was too much for her to kind of, like, receive my very, like, milquetoast Capaceo. Like, maybe she might sort of view it like, what? Like, thinking you're going to dance with this with, like, that weak Capaceo? And he made a point that where she was located, I had the opportunity, if I did this and she didn't, like, look up and meet my gaze, to just walk right by and then, out somewhere. So, that was like, it felt very advanced in that way. But the main takeaway was sometimes you really have to be direct. You really have to kind of put yourself out there and show some vulnerability that I want to dance with you.
Yeah.
The way I look at that, my prior Capaceo, or my Capaceo prior to him pointing that out, was like, yeah, maybe I was like a little bit, like I wasn't really open to that vulnerability. I'm like, hey, look, I'd like to dance with you. Right. Would you like to dance with me? It's like, no.
Right. You're not putting anything on the line.
Right.
Yeah.
There was another, I kind of contrast that because there was another person I wanted a Capaceo, and I got the sense that, like, maybe she came into, like, my proximity a few times, and I thought, like, maybe she's open to dancing with me. But I got the sense that, I don't know if this is the case, but maybe her expectation for the Capaceo was, I need you to be prepared to be humiliated.
Wow.
Just like there's not going to be any outs. Like, you're going to have to come up in some way where at the end of it, it's going to have to be really clear, like, boom, walk straight up, nowhere else to go. And I'm just going to not look at you, and you'll have to slink away. And that's what you will have to do.
Yeah.
And there's something, honestly, that's kind of exciting about that. Like, there's kind of like, yeah, well, maybe one day, like, I'll just try a Capaceo that way, or, the rejection will be so apparent, you'll just have to.
You're saying this person was sort of making you do that?
That was the fantasy. Again, I'm very much in that sort of tango person overanalyze. I just kind of wondered if that might exist, right? To the extent
I mean, some people very much do that. Yeah. Some leaders very much do that. That's their main tactic. The leaders to come up to followers and Capaceo them really close up.
Yeah.
Some people, might call it like guerrilla Capaceo. Yeah. And I think it's a little bit of in a gray area because some people might say yes because at that point it's uncomfortable to say no. And there's that whole other, can of worms.
Yeah. I did feel like with this particular technique that there was almost an aggressiveness. It's almost like the peacocking was, I'm coming at you like a lumbering gorilla, and you're going to kind of like be startled almost. Like, honestly, that's how I thought of it. I was like, I'm going to startle her. And then in that moment, I'll be like, come on, come dance with me. And she's going to be like, okay. Before she actually realizes, no, damn it.
Yeah. I mean, some people might say that you did that. And you know what? That's a tactic. It's a tactic, and then
the full spectrum exists.
Spectrum.
That's what's so fun about it.
And I think, some people might say this is not like a very elegant capasseo, or it's too aggressive, but you got to realize the context. And when we're dealing with advanced dancers who are in high demand, it is very much that you have to peacock and you have to get their attention, because they're just not looking around. They know they're going to get something good. Like, they have plenty of people waiting to dance with them. So in certain contexts, I think for leaders, for men, it really is important to sort of be more aggressive. I, as a leader, have to be more aggressive in general, because women a lot of times don't know that I want to dance with them. So most of the time, I actually have to put myself on the line really obviously.
Yeah.
I have to even sometimes verbalize it, even though that's not supposed to be. But, a lot of women ask me actually, like, how do you capasseo as a woman? And I break the rules a lot. Just because there is no other way.
Chataseo.
I chataseo.
I talked with a guy outside, and he kind of said basically like most of his capaseos are chataseos. Like,
it's a tactic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, if you're not able to get a capasseo, or if you feel isolated and, you're like giving up, like, some of your tactics can be go chat with people, because, you don't know. You don't have to like go into it. I think the difference is going into it with that expectation. And I think everybody can feel that. If I have a person come up to me and it's obvious that they're hogging my time because they want to lead into capasseo, it's a really wet blanket. Like, I really don't like that. But a lot of times it'll be a chat. Like, I had a chat with one of my friends. We talked for like 3 tandas worth. And that led to, hey, do you want to dance this? And then we danced, and it was just this magical extension of the conversation where it's like the capasseo was the conversation, right? Like, the capasseo took that long to develop, and then it resulted in a wonderful tanda. So that's also, I think, on limits. You just have to know how to use that wisely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Continue to re-examine, all parts of your dance.
Right.
I think would be a good piece of advice. I tried the technique and grabbed somebody just this weekend that I haven't danced with in a while. And it was through this, just walked straight towards her with a steady gaze and like kind of looked up and,
Wow. So you're putting that into practice.
I'm putting it into practice. You're all might see some more gorilla capasseo from me out there, people.
If you've made it this far in the episode and you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, I invite you to do that. And if you are a fan of this podcast, would love to hear some feedback from you. Submit a review on Apple Podcasts for us. That's really helpful. If you want to join my live banters that I do inside my private Facebook community, you can check out the links in the show notes.
Off to go do some dancing?
Yes. All right. See you later.
Ciao.
Ciao.